I recently strained a muscle in my back, so if I make weird faces, especially when I'm moving my hands around, that's why. Now, let's get the ball rolling with the disclaimer. Why haven't we figured this out yet? We started diagnosing Alzheimer's 120 years ago. And despite all the advancements in technology since then, you're not much better off now than you would have been back then if you get diagnosed. Modern medicine is really good at acute problems, but horrible at chronic ones. Like, if you break your leg, the hospital is the best place for you to go, as I did last year when it happened to me. 200 years ago, the top killers in the United States were infectious diseases. Modern medicine did a great job of fixing those. But when they tried to take that same model and incorporate it to fixing chronic disease, the results were disastrous. If you let your beliefs limit your thinking, that will make it more difficult for you to find the solutions that you're after. I made videos talking about how vegetable oils poison every cell in your body, including in your brain. But if you're an Alzheimer's researcher and you believe the American Heart Association when they tell you that vegetable oils are good for you, you're probably not going to look into the fact that Alzheimer's was first diagnosed about 20 years after vegetable oils first made their way into our food. Remember that chronic diseases take decades of damage in order to manifest. I made videos talking about how important cholesterol is to your overall health and well-being. 25% of all the cholesterol in your entire body is located in your brain. But if you're an Alzheimer's researcher and you believe the American Heart Association when they tell you that having high cholesterol is bad for you, you're probably not going to look into the studies showing that older people with higher levels of cholesterol tend to have better brain function. Another thing getting in our way is our belief in our understanding of genetics. Notice the wording there. I didn't say genetics was a problem. I said our belief in our understanding of genetics was a problem. I'll touch on this again in the cancer videos, but our fascination with DNA and genetics is costing us dearly. Here is a model of a cell commonly seen in biology textbooks. In the middle of the cell is a big bubble called the nucleus, and within the nucleus, the DNA is housed. They often call the nucleus the control center of the cell. Even the definition of the word nucleus implies that it's like a brain, a heart, and the lungs all combined into one. I'll read the Merriam-Webster definition for you. The central and most important part of an object, movement, or group, forming the basis for its activity and growth. With the way they frame that, it is understandable that we would believe medical professionals when they tell us the cause of some of our problems is our genes. Too often, genetics is used as a sort of catch-all or a boogeyman, a way of explaining away things that we really don't understand. People who have a parent or sibling with Alzheimer's go on to develop Alzheimer's more often than people who do not have a parent or sibling with Alzheimer's. For them to make the leap that Alzheimer's is thus inherited is both ignorant and reckless. Just because two things happen together doesn't mean that one thing causes another. In statistics, one of the first things they teach you is that correlation does not equal causation. If you say to researchers and medical professionals, correlation does not equal causation, they will agree with you. They might even finish the sentence with you because they've heard it before. Then they'll turn right around and jump to conclusions that they shouldn't be jumping to. BuzzFeed made a list of the 10 most ridiculous correlations, and I'll go through them now. Number 1, ice cream consumption leads to murder. Number 2, a pirate shortage caused global warming. Number 3, living in a poor country increases penis size. Number 4, eating organic food causes autism. Number 5, M. Night Shyamalan makes bad movies because people don't buy newspapers. Number 6, using Internet Explorer leads to murder. Number 7, Mexican lemon imports prevent highway deaths. Number 8, obesity caused the debt bubble. Number 9, Facebook caused the Greek debt crisis. Number 10, Facebook canceled out the cholesterol-lowering effects of Justin Bieber. Now, as I went over that list, you knew that just because the two things were related doesn't mean that one caused the other. Yet, they'll tell you that Alzheimer's is genetic. They say they've even isolated the particular gene responsible, ApoE4. Most people have 2 sets of chromosomes, one from each parent. They say having the ApoE4 gene on one of your chromosomes triples your risk of developing Alzheimer's, and that having a copy of the ApoE4 gene on both chromosomes multiplies your risk by 8-fold. They figured that out by looking at the data for the people with Alzheimer's and comparing that to the data for the population as a whole. The problem with that is they're using the word risk, and risk implies cause and effect, something they have not established. Say it with me. Correlation does not equal causation. There are people with 2 copies of the ApoE4 gene who never develop Alzheimer's. By the same token, there are people with 0 copies of the ApoE4 gene that do develop Alzheimer's. So how can we say that genetics is to blame? We can extend that question to any chronic disease. It's not because of the genes that we're passing down to our children, it's because of the lifestyles that we're passing down. In the last 20 years, Alzheimer's rates have doubled. I've stated before that Alzheimer's rates are expected to double again within the next 30 years. Because we live so long, it takes many thousands of years for humans to change our genes. This is shown in the fossil record. People who lived 10,000 years ago are just like we are now. Alzheimer's and all the other chronic diseases are growing way too rapidly to be caused by genetic changes that aren't happening. We also seem to forget what we were taught about genetics as children. A long, long time ago, giraffes used to have short necks. Over time, the giraffes' necks got longer until they reached the lengths that we see today. But each giraffe's neck didn't stretch over the course of its life. Some giraffes were born with longer necks, and some were born with shorter necks. The ones with longer necks were able to reach more food. That success allowed them to pass on their genes. The giraffes with shorter necks starved and died out. Maybe you didn't make the connection, or maybe they were just super delicate with the wording when they taught you. But what creates pressure on genes to change is death without the ability to pass those genes on. deaths from chronic diseases typically occur after the childbearing years. So that means there is no pressure from death for the genes to change. Meaning, again, genes can't be the reason for chronic disease. 23andMe says I have 0 copies of the ApoE4 gene. When I found that out, I didn't breathe a sigh of relief. I mentioned beliefs getting in the way, and unfortunately, it's going to get worse from here. Even if you were a researcher who was inquisitive, skeptical, and understood deep down that correlation does not equal causation, you would still have to deal with an obstacle so powerful and dangerous that I'm going to call it the horseman of the health apocalypse. Human nature. Particularly, human nature in the form of collective greed and the bandwagon effect. I could spend the rest of my life giving examples of these concepts and still not even scratch the surface. I tend to shy away from conspiracy theories. I'm going to read the definition of conspiracy theory to you now from Merriam-Webster. A conspiracy theory is a theory that explains an event or set of circumstances as the result of a secret plot by usually powerful conspirators. I bring this up because the purpose of a corporation is to maximize shareholder value. So it is not a conspiracy theory to say that a corporation is acting against the public as a whole in order to benefit only its few shareholders. That brings us to aducanumab. I only assume that's how it's pronounced. It's a monthly intravenous infusion created by a pharmaceutical company called Biogen. It is being marketed as Aduhelm under the premise that it helps with Alzheimer's. Aduhelm was approved by the FDA with just the teensiest bit of controversy. The FDA put together a committee to investigate whether or not Aduhelm should be approved. I'm going to go ahead and read from some news articles verbatim. The committee had found that the evidence did not convincingly show that Aduhelm could slow cognitive decline in people in early stages of the disease, and that the drug could cause potentially serious side effects like brain swelling and brain bleeding. None of the 11 members of the committee considered the drug ready for approval. 10 voted against, and 1 was uncertain. Here's another clip. In a powerful statement of disagreement with the Food and Drug Administration's approval of Biogen's controversial Alzheimer's drug, 3 scientists have resigned from the independent committee that advised the agency on the treatment. Now, if you believed that the FDA was an organization dedicated to looking out for your well-being, a headline like that would shock you. Remember, again, don't let your beliefs stop you from finding solutions to your problems. 2 things. 65% of the funding that the FDA receives is directly from the companies that it's supposed to regulate. That puts them in a precarious situation when it comes to making regulatory decisions. Also, there is a revolving door between positions of leadership within the FDA and positions of leadership within the pharmaceutical companies. So when you look at the FDA as an extension of the pharmaceutical companies, the approval of Aduhelm isn't shocking at all. it was well within the pursuits of maximizing shareholder profits. Prior to that, there hadn't been a new Alzheimer's drug approved in the last 20 years. Pharmaceutical companies had been spending billions of dollars on research with nothing to show for it. Something had to give, and it wasn't going to be their pockets. That's why if you come to me telling me that I should do something because the FDA recommends it, I'm going to have trouble taking you seriously. That applies to a lot of other agencies as well, unfortunately, like the Alzheimer's Association. If you go to the treatments tab of their website, the first thing you see is Aduhelm. They sing its praises and don't even mention the investigative committee. To add insult to injury, literally, Aduhelm is priced at $56,000 per year. Your Medicaid premiums went up in 2022 because Medicare is paying for it. This video ran a little longer than I expected it to. I'm going to move talking about the bandwagon effect of human nature to the next video. So the next video should be about the bandwagon effect, what Alzheimer's actually is, and what you can do. That will probably close out the arc on Alzheimer's.